Do 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 do. Hi everyone, this is Lauren, your sewing buddy, and today I have a project from my bin. You can see there it's Jody, Mantle, and Hood. This is from the UFO bin, my unfinished objects, and this is several years ago that I made the outfit that this is supposed to go with. So I don't have the same lining material anymore, so I'll have to figure something else out. But I do still have this fabric because I specifically stored it away in my UFO bin. It's faux suede in sort of a forest green. And so I'm going to make sort of an elfy mantle and hood to go with this outfit. And these were photos taken today because I don't unfortunately have finished photos from when it was made. But what I plan to do is sort of a leafy shaped collar, right, like so, and then a single leafy point down in the back, which will also have a hood attached, so hopefully overall a very elfin effect. So the first thing I need to do then is draft out the mantle. I'm going to do this on the fold so I get a nice even situation. Assuming I can actually get this on the fold in frame. Let's find out, because I have been notorious lately for getting all of the action out of frame. But scooting it up and over that leg of my chair should eventually get me where I need to be for a full floor to spread this out on. Speaking of, we are looking for a bigger apartment, sharing with a friend, so wish us luck there. And what I need to do here is determine, well, measure out how high I wanted the mantle to go in the front, or rather how low from the shoulder. So I already measured that out on Jody, and I'm just marking those here, and then remembering that I need to add in seam allowance for both of those, because there will be seam allowance at the top and the bottom, about ½ inch. So once I have those measured in, I'm doing, instead of a straight point, I'm doing about an inch wide point at the bottom, because again, there will be seam allowance, and I want to make sure that I have enough space there to get a good seam. And I'm just roughly drawing out sort of a leafy shape. And, not the best leaf, but for freehand, it's not bad. And then I just need to make sure that I have the width that I need. From the shoulder, I wanted 5 inches, and then the rest of that will be the front neckline. Just want to double check the height here. Make sure that that is where I want that to be. And then I'm doing the shoulder at a little bit of a slope, so I'm measuring with that in mind out to that 5 inches, and then all of that becomes the front neckline. And then drawing that slope down, because human shoulders don't go straight out like robot shoulders or anything like that. And then with that drawn in, I'm going to grab my fabric shears and start cutting. I'm going to start at the bottom here and then work my way up the side, and then decide that, you know what, I want a little bit more of a leafy shape here. So I'm going to draw this curve a little sharper and also bring it out further, because looking at the amount of neck there, it's not going to be nearly enough. So this kind of serves two purposes for that, which is to add a little bit more neckline and then also to define that shape a little bit better. And once I've got that thoroughly drawn out, I can double check with the measuring tape, make sure that that is going to provide enough neckline for my needs, and then resume cutting this shape out. And again, this is the front panel for the mantle. And then the back panel will have a single point down the middle, which is why this piece is, the point doesn't come straight down the middle, it's off to the side a little bit. I wanted that sort of a look for the front of the overall look, which I will show you at the end. Now we're moving on to the back panel, and I'm using the front panel as a guide, measuring out to be sure that between the two I'll have half of the neck circumference that I need, plus seam allowances. I also want to make sure that I have that shoulder slope so that those match up. I just need to think about math and seam allowances and try to figure out exactly what I need all of this to be. That's me counting my seam allowance. There's a lot of thought process, and I am a sleep-deprived mommy, in case you can't tell. But looks like that's about what I would need for the back piece neck. Then I'm actually going to scoot that over to the fold line where I would want this to be cut. There we go. So then drawing that out and making sure that my shoulder seams are going to line up. And then I just, once again, need to sketch out that leafy shape. Mark out where I wanted the length of that to be, which was 12 inches. And there we go. Ready to cut. While I'm cutting that out, I'd like to remind you that there are links to my Ko-fi and Patreon in the description. Times are a little tough right now, so any support you could give to this channel is supremely appreciated. If you want to help me continue doing this, then please donate if you can. Now we're moving on to the lining pieces, which you can see I've already cut out. I just need to get to the sewing now. I've got my 3 facing and my 3 lining, and we are all ready to go. So at my machine, I'm going to do the shoulder seams. I've decided I'm going to bagline this instead of trying to flatline everything because it's just going to work better overall. I hopefully will have a reversible piece when all is said and done, but we'll see how that goes. Just need to get those attached, and you can see with this I am going to be pulling the fabric a little bit through. That's because it does tend to be sort of a sticky fabric, not like tactile sticky, but when it's going through the feed dogs it's kind of sticky. So if I let it go through on its own, then it would be a lot of very teeny tiny stitches, which is not something that I have the patience to deal with today. So I'm just gonna pull that through, get it done, and do the other shoulder. I'm not using pins on these because it's a simple straight stitch, straight seam all the way down, and not very long, so very little chance for anything to go awry as long as I keep an eye on things. So with that done, time to move on to lining, which is going to be the same process. Just attaching the shoulder seams onto the back, and then once those are done, I just need to sew the 2 pieces that I'll have together and flip them out, and that'll be the mantle. Here we have both pieces pinned together, ready to sew. I'm only doing the outside edge, not the neckline, because the neckline is where this is going to meet up with the hood, and the neckline is also going to be the point where I flip this out, because right now it is pinned right sides together. So I've made sure that all of the seams line up, all of the points line up, everything lays flat as it is, and it's just a matter of stitching around the edge and then clipping those curves and turning it right side out. And at the points, what I'm doing is going until my needle is exactly halfway in the middle of the fabric, and then that's where I stop with my needle deep into the fabric, turn the whole fabric, and then put the foot back down and continue sewing. That way I get a nice sharp point every time. For the seams here, unfortunately I didn't press this first, which means that I do need to hold the seams open to make sure that they lay flat open instead of folding over or bunching up. So it's one of those things where being lazy does make more work sort of, but also I would have to pull out my ironing board, press the seams, and then put my ironing board away so I can continue sewing. Not an ideal setup right here, so that's why I take these shortcuts. In any case, once these are sewn together, I can get this turned out and show you what the mantle itself looks like. Before I do that, of course, I do need to go through and clip all of these curves. Why I'm using tiny thread snips to do this, I thought it would be easier. They're lighter weight. It's not. Just use your shears. I'm also trimming off the ends of these points. I'm trimming them incorrectly though. I should have gone for more of an arrow shape instead of the inverse. And you see I'm cutting the curves in 2 layers. That's because you want to offset your clips. You don't want to just clip straight through. You'll get a smoother curve if you offset them like I'm doing here. That's something that I learned in a $5 pressing class at Costume College, so worth the money. Anyway, once I have all of those snipped and clipped, I'm going to go through and cut the lining layer, trim that down, because once I have it turned out, the extra bulk there will, it'll show through. But if I trim it down a little bit, then that gives the fashion layer seam allowance a little bit of wiggle room, sort of to smooth itself out. That way you'll get a much more flat appearance at your edges. Whereas if I left it all, then there's a little bit of extra bulk, and probably if you pressed it, you would see that there was that whole ½ inch of seam allowance there. So because I've already clipped these curves, I am now creating a bunch of fabric confetti, which will sit on my sewing room floor for at least a week. It is still there at the time of my voice recording. Who knows how long it's going to remain? Probably not too much longer, as we do have a cat who enjoys licking nylon things. I don't think this is nylon, but it's some kind of synthetic. We also have a baby who at some point in the near future is going to be crawling, so we'll see who... Well, we won't see who gets there first. I'll vacuum tomorrow and it'll be gone. So now I've got this turned out, and you can see how nicely the seams are matched up there. Normally what you would want to do here is understitch it and press it. I did not understitch it. I'm not going to press it. Instead, I'm going to fiddle it into place and then do a tiny top stitch right up along the edge here. That's all done now. You can see how nice and flat and smooth the whole thing is. Very happy with how that turned out. Look at those points. I mean, it's not the pointiest point, but those are pretty good points. Anyway, time to make a hood. So I have my remaining fabric here, and I've got it folded over. That fold is going to create the top of the hood. I want the back of this to be a little bit... Oh, just broke my chalk, so let me go sharpen that. Okay, sharpened pencil now. I want the back of this to be a little bit pointed, so I'm going to draw that out. The back of the hood is always going to be the seamed part, and then the front is just going to go straight down, and that's going to just make a nice, easy hood. If I wanted to do an Assassin's Creed style, I could do something a little bit more ornate, but I think just a simple hood with a pointed back is going to do for here. So now I need to figure out how much of a neckline I need, and make sure that I'm going to have enough hood. I might gather the hood a little bit at the neck. It's not necessary, but it does give it a little bit more volume. So let's see how much I eyeballed. That's pretty good. Not bad, really. Once I allow for seam at the back, that should be about dead on. Of course, I did not allow for the seam allowance at the front on this, so we'll see how that turns out later. But I'm just going to draw a little bit of a curvy line here because I think at this point that I'm going to gather that. I won't. So instead I'm just going to cut straight along that crease that you see there. I've now got that cut out from both the green fabric and my lining. So I think what I need to do next is make my neckties, because you've got to have some kind of closure at the front on this. What I'm going to do is take some of this cabbage here and just cut a couple of straight pieces. Because it's still double layered, I just need to cut once. So I'm going to just slice through here really quick, trying to follow a grain line that I can see. Not the best way to get a very straight cut, but it works for what I need for right now. However, I do not trust myself really, so I'm going to grab my yardstick for the second cut, just to make sure that I'm following along that same straight line. And this will also help me eyeball how wide I want this, because I want it to be twice as wide as I want the final tie to be. So somewhere around there. And then rather than trace that, I'm just gonna once again cut all the way across here. Once I have those cut, I'm going to treat them kind of like a bias tape. So I'm going to fold both edges into the center and then fold that in half, and it's going to fight me and try not to show you what I'm talking about. But anyway, looks like this in the end, except with stitches. So now with those done, I just need to put the hood together. I've sewn up the back seams like we talked about, and now you get to watch me comedically try to figure out exactly how these are supposed to go together. The funny thing is, I actually had it right to begin with, I just had the wrong one on the inside. Also, I didn't need to worry so much about the point on the gold fabric, because I'm going to be reversing these anyway and flipping that to the outside, so the point will not matter. Anyway, yeah, it took me a few tries to figure out exactly which way this was supposed to go. I'm not sure what was going on with my brain. I blame having a child and not sleeping so well. Yeah, eventually I did get it all figured out and wound up with right sides together, lining on the inside, and everything will be okie dokie from there. And here we have the hood put together. I've done the same top stitching technique around the top, or on the front there. Now I just need to attach the hood to the mantle, green to green, and the way that I'm pinning this at first, I'm excluding the gold fabric from the mantle, which I actually need to include for this because the hood fabric is what's going to encase everything together. I'm just having all kinds of fun with my brain with this project, but it will eventually get done. And once I figured out the pinning situation, I realized that they didn't quite match up. I had a little not enough hood due to not accounting for the seam allowance in the front. So what I'm going to do is just fold that over and then fold the lining fabric over the top of that to enclose it. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to work out. First, I have to trim this curve here, or clip this curve, and I no longer have patience with this project to do the offset clipping, so I'm just going to take my shears and do snip snips all along that neckline till I get to the other side, because the whole damn thing is curved. And then once I do that, I just need to fold the fabric, the lining fabric over the top, kind of line the edge up with the stitch line that I already have there, and then once I attach the neckties, everything will be done. I really struggled with pinning here because as I came in from the one edge and got to the center, then it came up tight, as you can see here, so I had to go back, kind of work my way backwards, make sure everything was laying straight, or curved as needed. As we know, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, so if I need a little bit more length, then I can curve that line and match it up a little bit better. Also, as I'm going, I'm stretching the hood lining a little bit more just to eke out every little bit of space that I can. So that way I can hopefully get something that matches up and lays flat and looks pretty, so that if needed, this could be a reversible hood. There we go, all nicely finished. Stitched down, no obvious mess ups on the outside. Inside looks pretty good too. Now to attach these neckties. How to do that? Lazy Lauren would just sort of flip that over itself, call it finished. But again, we're going for hopefully something reversible, so I'm going to rip open the side seam on the mantle here, which might take me a minute. Normally the seam ripping would not be quite so fussy, however I am deathly afraid of ripping through the lining fabric on this and having to recut that or do some whip stitch to fix it, or any number of things really. Like, it's fixable, but I'd rather not have to. I'm just making a hole that we can shove the raw end of that tie into and then call it done once we sew it closed. Then I just need to shove that tie in there, or at least try to wrestle it in. Maybe rip the hole open a little bit more. We'll see. Because this is the side that's folded over, it is a little bit tougher. I've got fabric kind of bunching up, getting in my way. So I am using the seam ripper both to open it up and to shove the tie deeper in. And there is a lot of profanity in my mind doing this. It was not an easy task. I have regrets and lessons learned, but you know, in the end it turns out okay. You just tuck it in and smooth it out, and everything's fine. And then I did sew it in there and then fold it back over this way so that it sort of covers up where that little bit of green is on the inside to add to the reversibility factor. And with those ties attached, the mantle is complete. You can see here with the hood. Of course, I can't get the hood to stand up on its own. It's not quite that stiff. In any case, I'm very happy with how this turned out. I hope that you are too. If you enjoyed this video, please like, give it a thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe, of course, if you want to see more like this. I'm working my way through my UFO box right now, so that's what the next few videos are going to be. I hope that you go create beautiful things this week, and I will see you again on Friday.